Welcome to the #Attitudeshield podcast, the true mental operating script rewriting program designed for those looking for a change from within. No more hype or sugar-coated promises. This is to-the-point guidance on how to change the way we think to grab the life we always wanted. Are you ready for the change? Now your host, David L. Parker.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to #Attitudeshield. I'm David L. Parker, and I am glad you're here. Let me tell you what. I am excited. Today we're going to wrap up 4 days of talking about poison. The people around you that could be poison, and we're going to get into the antidote. Before we get too far going in the show here, I want to send a shout out to Professor David, who just spent some time here in the Deadwood, Leeds, South Dakota area, and I had the extreme privilege of meeting him. And as you may or may not be aware, that one of the things I love to do, since I enjoy meeting people and I enjoy listening to people, is I do a shuttle run, an airport shuttle run through a local taxi company. And I was able to carry him from Deadwood down to Rapid City. And the shout out to Professor David. He's an IO professor, industrial organizational psychology professor, which of course, you know me, that's very near and dear to my heart, right? You know, a master's degree done in that. And we talked, and he's a brilliant man. And it was just fantastic to talk to somebody who is excited and turned on by things that are similar, right? And that's going to be talked about here later in a little while, because obviously that's part of the antidote. But I want to wrap up this morning talking about the poisons and how to get away from these things and how to recognize. We've been talking 100% on how to recognize poison around us. People who just are tearing us down, that they're gaslighting, they're verbally abusive, they're narcissistic, they're all those things where they take from you and give nothing back, where they take from you and then belittle you for it, where they take from you and it's not a two-way street. It's not a two-way flow of energy. It's not any kind of harmony between you and them whatsoever. And there is so much of that in our world today. There just is. Human beings, there are so many different fables, if you will, so many different ways to look at it. But I like to look at it as you have two parts to you. You have the warrior and you have the victim. And whichever one that you feed, whichever one that you focus on, whichever one that you put energy into is exactly the one you're going to be. There's a lot of things that happen to us that we, due to circumstance, due to things around us, due to how we've handled other things, that we react to because we don't take time to respond. We just react. Remember, react stands for reacting out the problem, making it bigger, right? Instead of taking time to respond, which is thinking about something and then coming out in a different manner, starting over, if you will, right? Due to the poison around us, due to people's actions, their thoughts, the way they do things. Now, we talked about how to spot a gaslighter. They're just crazy folk, if you will, and I don't mean it in a behavioral health sense. I mean, they're just doing stuff that makes you go, wait, what? Why are you, wait, what? You know, the people that will lie on you and then tell you it's your fault, the people that blame you for their actions, people that tell you you're crazy. You know, they're the kind of people that when you catch them and can prove to them that they're lying to you, they deny it. Doesn't matter. They're never going to ever admit or give in to anything you have to say. The narcissists who just feed on you. Now, narcissists can be very charismatic people. They really can. They can really make you go, wow, that's a cool person. Why do I feel like crap? Because that's what they do. Verbally abusive people, mentally abusive people. We talked about the relationships where one or the other is ghosting the relationship. They're never around. They're never involved in what's going on, and they make it feel like, you know, that you did something, or They send you this message that says the people that you're around aren't important enough to them to be around. So you're sort of in a ghosted relationship. You're sort of I don't know, how do I say this? You're there but not there. You're welcome but not welcome. You're like a tool. You're like a set of golf clubs, if you will. When you play golf like I do, and hopefully you play better than I do, when you have a set of golf clubs, I don't carry them every day. They're not in my truck all the time, right? I don't have them with me every second. When it's time to play golf, I go get the golf clubs, right? And in between playing golf, once I've cleaned them up and put them away, I don't really think about them. And that's what I mean by a person who's ghosting you in a relationship. You're the set of golf clubs, and they're going to pick you up and use you when they need you. Now, in a significant other or intimate relationship with a ghoster, it's pretty rough because basically you're needed when they have a physical desire, or you're needed when they want something, but the rest of the time you're not needed. A lot of ghosters have crazy hobby rooms. Now, I have an office, right? You can see I'm surrounded by some memories on the walls. Where I'm going. My antidotes are on the walls to this poisonous type of folks. But what you can see is right over there is my boys, my adopted grandsons' learning area. Right? We got their table and their little chairs and a lot of their craft stuff. And then farther over there is a closet that has all their neat stuff they bring from school. We put it up on the walls. I mean, I can literally look at some of the things they've been doing in school. On the far side over there is a couple of bookshelves full of their books. And again, more arts and craft projects, things they're doing. And then right behind me is another desk, which is my partner in crime, if you will. My good friend who helps me with Your Restaurant Solutions, and of course has been involved in hashtag Attitudeshield before I even knew what to call it, right? And she is a rock and roll star, which really has a lot to do with how I get things done. Anywho, so I don't have what I call a hobby room, see, because I do my best not to ghost the relationship. Ghosting is another form of abuse as far as I'm concerned. I think one of my most interesting insights or experiences talking to somebody who was being ghosted in the relationship was due to video games. One of the reasons I found it sort of fascinating was, one, it didn't end up being the only one I ever talked to who was getting ghosted due to electronics. But it actually got to the point that it dissolved the relationship. This male would play video games and would never come upstairs and sleep with his wife because he would be down there from when he got off work playing video games or watching movies until he fell asleep on the couch. Even when she came out and to the top of the stair landing and would say, "Hey, come upstairs and make love to your wife. What are you doing?" And he would say, "I got to finish this game." She was only necessary for making of food and doing laundry. He had lost his prowessness to a video game. She became completely ghosted. There was no purpose for her. Then the thing that I found intriguing about poison, or one of the things I find intriguing about poison, is we seem to go from one poisonous position to another, everybody. We seem to be attracted to the same kind of things. Why? Because we're accustomed to it, one. Two, nobody wants to be ambushed emotionally, let alone physically. But you want to have some predictability in what's going to happen to you in your future. And somehow that helps us, the mechanisms in our brain. We seem to seek out and get involved with the same type of people, like we've talked about in my past. I have been attracted to hurricanes forever. And when I finally came out of the storms and stayed in the sunlight, my life got beautiful. When I finally made the decision that no more of this, life got better. Life became amazing. I'm excited that life became amazing in my 40s because if, Lord willing, I live to be in my 80s, that's going to be 50% of my life in amazing sunlight. If I'm going to not be here that much longer, I sort of missed out, but we're not talking about that. So this young lady leaves the relationship, the marriage, right, over the video games. She moves out. She's struggling. She knows some people. She house sits for a while, and then she gets involved with this guy. And within months, it's exactly the same thing. Now, I shouldn't say the word exactly because exactly speaks of nothing but maybe identical twins who, again, aren't exactly. But she finds herself in a relationship where it's a little different, but the guy ghosts her for his friends and video games. Anywho, she was chatting it up with me about these situations, and I've been talking to her for a good year and a half. And when she brought it up, I said, wait, let me ask you a question. Have you talked about it? Have you told the new guy what it feels like when he chooses to circle, square, X, triangle versus you? She said no. A couple of weeks later, she moves out in a huff, and she's telling me about it, and I'm like, did you circle, square, triangle, X conversation him on that PlayStation? And listen, I'm not a gamer, so if I said that wrong, my mistake. Anywho, she said, no, I'm just not going to fight that anymore. I said, that's a decision. We all have to make our decisions. So a couple of weeks later, he's talking to her. And next thing you know, he's figured out because she decided to talk about it. And then they worked out a routine and they ended up getting married, and they're doing pretty well together because they were able to stop the ghosting. So what does that equal? Communication, willingness to talk. So many people aren't willing to talk. Professor David, an amazing man that I told you at the beginning of the show that I met, was talking to me about, he shared something with me that was amazing. He was talking about how in the beginning of his marriage, when there was stress on life, when life seemed to come down on them like a ton of bricks, him and his wife would take it out on each other. And that the other person became the epitome, the manifestation of the challenge. And they would sort of have, fights over it. But they were smart enough to continue to communicate and discover this and find a way to resolve it. So the first thing you have to do is recognize the poison. Now let's talk about the last one. Now, when I say last, I'm talking about the last one I'm going to talk about, because obviously it's nowhere near the last type of poison in people out there. But I want to talk about the internal poison. I want to talk about how we poison ourselves. Well, I've told you 1,000 times, and I'm going to tell you 1,000,000 times more, that you'll never talk to anybody more than you talk to yourself. So you got to learn. You have to master how to speak to you. Remember, because your words are your operating script. Your words are your reality. Your words are your focus. Your words are your power. Your words are also your identity. So if you don't learn how to speak to you in the first place, then, our operating script has to be rewritten. We have to look at what we say. We have to bottom line up front. We have to bluff it. Bottom line up front. This is exactly what we stand for. Remember, we talked about you got to have a set of principles. You get to choose what they are. Anywho, the last poison I really want to talk about is you. Poisoning ourselves because of the things we say. Poisoning ourselves because of the things we say over and over again. Poisoning ourselves can show up in the form of where you make a crack about yourself. Well, if I wasn't that stupid, maybe, no, that ain't going to work. Poisoning yourself is saying that I don't think I can. Well, the second you said that, you're right. You don't think you can? How about you change that to, well, I never have yet, but I'll work on it. Or I never have yet, and I will. You can bust through and accomplish basically anything that you really want to do when you talk to you in the proper manner. Now, Professor David and I had a great conversation on a syndrome that I only call it that because that's what it's called, of what people, self-doubt, manifestation of the self-doubt of oneself, obviously, which I find hard to wrap my brain around, yet understandably easy and clear to see. Now, right now, you're like, what? He just double talked. No, he didn't double talk. I don't understand how people allow themselves to do this, because it seems counterproductive, but it's definitely a poison. And that is any level, any degree, any term, any size, and call it whatever you want to call it, of imposter syndrome. I'm fake syndrome. I'm not true to myself syndrome. I'm not worthy or haven't earned the recognition of who I am syndrome. Well, first of all, that one blows my mind, and that's so poisonous. It's terribly self-inflicted poison. I mean, it really is. If you're sharing with people, remember, your mess is your message. Your education connected with experience is your personal 1 out of 7.8 billion people's message. And remember, when we share this, when we share our mess, we share our struggles, we share our challenges with somebody else, just maybe, possibly, they might not have to go through the same thing. Isn't that what it's about? Haven't we talked about if we human beings would learn to share with each other and listen and learn, where we actually stayed interactive with the information we were given, then maybe we could not walk into that tree or off that cliff, or whatever emotional damage that we could avoid because we didn't follow it. But the imposter syndrome says that you're not good enough. You're not educated enough. You're not pretty enough, not tall enough, not fat enough, not skinny enough, not short enough. Your hands are too small. Your eyes are too big. Your teeth are too funny. Anything that self-mutilation talk does. How in the world can you be an imposter if you're being honest about what you know? How can it be imposter syndrome if you're being true to whom you are? How is it imposter syndrome just because you don't have the little initials on the other end of your name, PhD, MSA, MBA? Does that make you less of a person? You know, I'm enthralled with education. We know this. But I went through a 25-year of my life where I was like, I ain't doing that stuff no more. We evolve and we change because we're becoming more in tune with ourselves. And the first step is what we say to ourselves, right? So let's spend the last few minutes, get rid of the imposter syndrome, get rid of all the poison, and remember, here's the antidote, the beginning of the antidote. Right? And this is a multi-phase, multi-dose antidote, right? The first one is really strong. It's like the big boosted biotic, and that is self-speak. What you say to you. You'll never feel imposter syndrome if you never allow yourself to say it to yourself. It's not acceptable. You're never going to feel the self-doubt if you speak how confident you are. Continuously, 75,000 plus or minus thoughts a day go through that miraculous, amazing, the most complex machine in the universe known to humankind, your brain. You tell it what to think. You tell it what it believes. You tell it. You program it. You write the operating script every day of your life. You're rewriting that script. Every time you give in to something, you write a new code. Every time you have a success, you write a new code. You know, people say when they have teenage kids that it's like this new imposter moved into their child. Yes, There's a little pun for you. Well, think about it. In that phase of development of the child, the brain is just growing at right? These hundreds of thousands of connections are just going ballistic, right? And the brain is smart enough to know that the ones that are used survive and get stronger, and the ones that don't wither and die. And it's trying to figure out exactly what systems it's going to do. It's like, picking all these freaking programs and putting them into the hard drive and trying to figure out what to do at 1,000 miles an hour. And then I'll say, blah, 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 going on, and boom. That teenager that you remember being crazy like I was and watch other ones be wacko is because they're writing their operating script. The first one they had as a small child was made out of yeses and nos. Wants and desires, action, reward, food, no food, hot, no hot, cold, cold, hot. No, don't touch that. Ow, that hurts. I can't do that. Let me hug mom. That was an easy operating script. Teenage life becomes this hormonal explosion, right? Because they're really writing the true base code that's going to take them into adulthood. But the funny thing is that the base code can be changed just like that in a second. Then we get into our 20s and we start to change again. But it's all about what we say to ourselves. So when you're raising children or you're interacting with children, especially teenagers and young adults, and you hear them saying disparaging things, you hear them talking negatively, you hear them acting and talking out their frustrations of how things aren't right, help them learn to say it better. Give them the first step of the antidote to the poison that we all have within ourselves, which is the negative speech, because that negativity turns into a bad self-image. That bad self-image can grow into another challenge and another challenge. And before you know it, your operating script has developed mechanisms in your life, mechanical systems, if you will, that get you to react in a way that is self-harm, mental self-harm. Attitudeshield says no. Attitudeshield says, please stop with the mental self-harm. Attitudeshield says, please learn to speak to yourself in a powerful, powerful, powerful manner. Learn to control what your mind says. Only accept the truths, and that is that you're an incredible human being. Out of 7.8 billion people on the planet, you are the only you. There is nobody else like you. You're so unique that you make snowflakes jealous. And I'm not talking about the silly little comments people make politically now. I'm talking about the ones that fall from the sky, true snowflakes, crystal ice formations of the lightest kind that fall to the ground. None of them are the same, just like you are not the same as anybody else. You have to start with the antidote, rewriting your operating script, what you verbally say to you. Talk soon.
You've been listening to Attitudeshield, your double dose of espresso for your attitude. Check us out on Facebook and on the web at www.attitudeshield.com. Again, thanks for spending this time with us. Between now and when we talk again, keep those shields up, eyes on the target, and always be moving towards your dreams.